Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bolt Action Reloading. In this week's episode, we're going to be doing some primer testing with H4350 in 30-06. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here and you'd like to see how I and the rest of the community here make our group smaller, start now by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon. That way you get notified when I post next week's video and you won't miss anything. In this week's video, we're going to be doing some primer testing with H4350 and 30-06. This time, we're only really going to talk about two primers, one of which we've talked about on the channel before, but we're strictly looking to pick which primer we want to use going forward with H4350 when we're doing our 30-06 testing. Our two primers we're talking about today are the CCI BR-2, BR standing for bench rest, versus the 215M. So the 215M is a Magnum primer. We've done quite a bit of testing with that primer in H4350 in 6.5 Creedmoor. We've been happy with our results, and we wanted to see if we had the same response in 30-06. If you're new to us here, let's go over the platform real quick. Our test platform we're talking about today is the Tikka M695, chambered in 30-06. It has a 22.5-inch barrel. This is a secondhand rifle, and as far as I'm aware, it's pretty much in its stock configuration. The scope on it is only a 2.5-7. But I think it's going to be able to get the work we needed to get done today. We might end up changing it later on. Don't worry, guys. But at least for now, groups aren't our primary concern. With today's testing, we're basically doing a 10-shot velocity string, the same as we did when we were looking for nodes with the BR2, except we're adding another primer. And adding this primer, we're looking to see if we can get a consistent response, see if we see any nodes that we would like to load on when we do our next round of testing. Getting into our load data for today, our projectile for today is the Spear Gold Dot, 150 grain, part number 308150 GDB. Our brass for today's testing is Nosler Brass. This is its first firing, so we'll be fire forming during today's load. The primers for today's testing is a CCI BR-2 bench rest primer, as well as the Federal 215M large rifle Magnum match primer. The power for today is Hodgdon H4350. Our source of load data for today is from QuickLoad primarily. However, we have looked at a couple different sources to verify that we feel we're in safe pressure ranges. Our testing today is going to be starting off at 59.6 grains and going all the way to 62.3 grains in 0.3 grain increments. The cartridge overall length that we'll be loading to is 3.30 inches, which is going to give us a CBTO of about 2.718 inches, or about 30 thousandths off our rifle's lands. QuickLoad is going to guesstimate our velocity to start somewhere around 2857 feet per second, and we're supposed to be finishing off slightly over pressure at just under 2990 feet per second. As we go up from round to round in 0.3 grain increments, we'll be looking for pressure signs as we go along to make sure we stay safe, but we will be covering that later in the video. Ordinarily, we'd go out to the range, but again, we're really not shooting for groups, and at the point of recording this video, I think we've got a better idea of how we're going to change our test setup moving forward. For these initial velocity rounds, we weren't really concerned with the groups. I know there's some of you guys that really like to see the groups. For our BR2 primer, we had a 9-shot group of 0.952 MOA, and a 10-shot group of 1.452 MOA. I know I did pull that one shot. Honestly, pretty happy with that group altogether. I had just actually changed my setup to shoot that group, and that was the only one I'd done with that setup. The 215M ended up being a 2.257 MOA 10-shot group, so certainly not a stellar, but I do think we're going to have plenty of good luck with this moving forward. For the BR2 test, at 59.6 grains of H4350, we started out at 2863 feet per second. As we increased in charge, we increased velocity. Our max velocity actually hit at 61.4 grains at 2973 feet per second. At our max charge of 62.3 grains, we actually maxed out at 2964 feet per second. Skipping over to the 215M, at 59.6 grains, we started off at 2915 feet per second. It seems if we started right there on a plateau as we had almost that same velocity for the next three charges. As we increased to 62.3 grains, our max velocity we achieved for today's test was 3,041 feet per second. As far as QuickLoad was concerned, our BR2 was under the maximum velocity and more than likely pressure as well for our load day. However, our 215M, being a hotter primer, we did achieve more velocity and likely hit some pressures over our max pressure, though we're not going to be able to see it in the brass, but we'll get to that. So 3,041 feet per second is what we hit versus the 2990 that it was predicting we were going to hit at our top spot there. Just because I believe it's easier to look at on the graph, we will throw our projected velocities versus our BR2 and 215M on the screen so you can see the predicted velocities versus what we achieved. Going forward for our primer, honestly is a little bit of a hard choice for me. Backing up for 2 seconds here, being as accuracy is what we're looking for, theoretically the barrel time which we'll be looking for is the 1.035 millisecond barrel time, which quick load says we were going to hit at 2974 feet per second and 62 grains. At 61.4 grains of the BR2, we were almost exactly on that node, though we did lose a little bit of velocity after those. Somewhere in that max velocity charge there with the BR2 looks like is right on our barrel time, and certainly looks like a bit of a velocity plateau to me. Looking at the 215M, it looks like there's a velocity node down at 2915 feet per second, possibly a small one again in the 60.5 to 60.8 range, and again maybe possibly a little bit higher at 62 grains. However, it does not appear it is as wide as the BR2 right on the top end. Picking a primer, I think you could flip a coin. I don't see a whole lot of spots on our velocity node today that are negative. Dropping 10 feet per second isn't the end of the world. The 60.8 grain 287.7 feet per second data point with the BR2 was the only one I wasn't very fond of on the graph here. Maybe that was a fluke, who really knows, but we certainly know we'd probably avoiding that area in our graph of where we're going to want to be. Looking more, we want to concentrate on that higher end. That is where our barrel time says we want to be, as well as that plateau with the BR2. So I'm very inclined to be using the BR2 moving forward, but I'm always interested to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think of our graphs and where we want to do our first loads with H4350 in our 30-06. Anyway, we talked about pressure. Let's look at our brass real quick. We can see as we move from 59.6 grains all the way to 62.3, we will do the BR2 first. As we look on the screen with the BR2, you can see nothing really of concern there. There is a little bit of primer flattening with our BR2. Nothing I would call excessive. Of all the testing we've done so far, it probably has the least amount of flattening out of any of our primers. Look at the 215, it's a little bit different story, but we had a little bit higher velocity, so that shouldn't really surprise anybody. Starting off at 59.6, the primers really aren't too flattened. They do show a little bit more pressure when we get to 62.3 grains, but no cratering, no visible ejector marks of any kind here, so I don't think we've found any unsafe pressures, but we're really not going to be looking to load any hotter than this anyway. And our next round, we should have a slightly larger case capacity now that they're fire formed. That being the case, our pressure signs should drop slowly, but we're going to take some case volume measurements, put those into quick load, get a better estimate for our next round of tests, and see what we want to do. So at this time, we've done some baseline testing with both Varget and H4350. Now we've got fireform brass. I think that's going to be our next step. Maybe we'll do two different tests, kind of covering the areas that we've learned in our graphs, pick what we think is going to be the best primer. If we don't like it, we can always switch to a different one and see how that works out. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. But even if you're not doing any primer testing in 30-06, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any comments or questions, make sure you post those in the comment section below. If you like the content here on the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get notified when I post next week's video. I hope to see you back next week. And until then, stay safe in small groups.